The race for governor in Wisconsin has tightened. As we mentioned earlier in this program, the latest Marquette Law School poll shows essentially a dead heat now. Governor Walker and Democrat Mary Burke are tied at 46% among registered voters. Among likely voters, Walker leads 48% to Burke's 45%. That's within the margin of error. For this and other takeaways from the survey, we're turning to Charles Franklin, director of the Marquette Law School poll, and I should say a colleague of mine at the law school. Good to have you here, Charles. Thanks very much. Let's talk about the numbers here and turnout, which of course is crucial to any election, but this one really seems to be very much about turnout.
It's clear in these data as well. With all registered voters, a dead tie. Likely voters, a 3-point Walker lead. Likely voters who are also excited about voting, a 5-point Walker lead, all within the margin of error as it happens. It illustrates how much both parties have to focus on turnout. If you go back to 2010, we had 2.1 million voters. November of 2012, we had 3.0 basically million. That's 900,000 people who might or might not turn out. And both campaigns have been investing heavily in identifying those voters, targeting them, trying to figure out how to mobilize them.
We're still 5 months away from the elections, but we're starting to get some insight into the strengths and weaknesses of Scott Walker and Mary Burke. What have we learned?
We've been asking a couple of times now, how well does cares about people like you describe Scott Walker, describe Mary Burke? With Governor Walker, more people say it does not describe him than say that he does care about people like him. With Mary Burke, more think she cares than don't care, though with Burke, a lot of people haven't made up their minds about that. That's something we've seen with Governor Walker for a couple of polls now. So even when his job approval is positive, as it is right now by a couple of 3 points, nevertheless, that sort of empathy factor seems a little more limited with him than it is at this point with Mary Burke.
He comes across to voters in the state as a decisive governor, does he not?
And that also shows up. We asked people, is able to get things done descriptive of Walker? Overwhelmingly, 68% say yes, that does describe him. Burke also is seen as more likely to get things done than not, but again, with 35% or so who don't know about her on that dimension. So Governor Walker has real strengths as a manager there maybe, or as a decisive leader, but not quite so much on the empathy side.
We asked an interesting question, and I think this will be a theme at least of the Burke campaign. She's touting her business experience, and we asked a question directly relating to that. How important is extensive business experience? How important is extensive political experience? What was the answer?
The public as a whole thinks business experience is much more important than political experience. Among Republicans, it's even more so. Among Democrats, more think business experience is more important, but it's a smaller margin. Of course, the irony here is the Democratic candidate has greater business experience. The Republican candidate has a long history in government. So it's not clear that people take that abstract view of what's a good quality and apply it to their specific choice between these two candidates.
Charles, let's talk about another theme in the poll, and this is the great, I would say, great distrust many people in Wisconsin have of government, of their elected officials, of our institutions, of the voting process. Were you surprised by what you found?
This is in line with other work, but it is still rather depressing. 60% say you can't trust government to do what's right. 80% think government is run for a few big interests, and 90% say government wastes a lot of tax money. So there's a huge level of cynicism there about government and its motivation and its ability to do things. And when we asked about whether there was a substantial amount of vote fraud across 4 different items, about 20% on every one of the 4 items believe that there are at least a few thousand or more votes that are fraudulently counted or recorded each election. That's a large level of apparent fraud in the system. And we also asked, do you think election officials are fraudulently reporting votes? It was slightly lower, but it was still about 17% that think there are several thousand or more votes fraudulently reported that way. So you see this distrust of the system spreading. The one irony in the great polarized system that we have is voters are that cynical about government, but then they seem quite supportive and accepting of their own side and not so ready to question the virtues of their side when it comes to who they're going to vote for.
Awful lot in the latest Marquette Law School poll. The director of the poll, Charles Franklin, with us today. Good to have you here, Charles. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Coming up next on Up Front, Milwaukee, the good, the bad, and the just plain ugly.